Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday and you guys are not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well, so make sure you are subscribed. Now, you guys, happy June. It is the beginning of a new month, which means it is the beginning of a new true crime category. And this is one I know you guys are definitely going to be very interested in. I asked you guys on the Killer Instinct Instagram, which if you do not follow along, you definitely should. The Instagram is where I give you guys lots of updates. I get case recommendations from you guys there, as well as true crime category case recommendations. I asked you guys a couple weeks ago what category you would like to see. And while you did give me a lot of great ones for the future, there was one that was definitely overpowering the rest. Many of you guys had these same recommendations, and that is what we are going to be focusing on for the month of June. So, with that being said, the month of June is being dedicated to fatal friendships. All throughout this month, we are going to be diving in and focusing on cases where our victims were killed by those who they trusted, cared about, saw frequently, had a bond with, all for it to end in an absolute tragedy. I'm very eager to share the cases that we have lined up for this month, and that includes the episode that we are starting out with today. As you can tell by the title of this episode, today we are talking about the youngest woman who was ever sentenced to death in the United States, as well as the brutal murder of a young woman named Colleen Slemmer. So with that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Now, this case takes place in Knoxville, Tennessee in the year 1995. And to begin this case, we are going to start by talking about a woman named Krista Pike. Krista Pike was born on March 10th, 1976 to her parents, Carissa Hansen and Emil Glenn Pike in Beckley, West Virginia. Krista grew up being at the center of her parents' very rocky relationship. 2 years after her parents were married, they got divorced after it was discovered that Carissa was having an affair. However, after only a year of being divorced, they remarried for another 2 years before divorcing a second time. Krista's parents really neglected her through this process. It was said that Carissa was a partier, she was very social, and sometimes that desire for partying overpowered any desire that there was to take care of her daughter. Other family members remember the times where Krista was crawling around in a filthy home filled with dog feces. It was just very unsanitary and unsafe conditions. Krista's paternal grandmother, so Emil's mother, she was really the only person that Krista ever felt truly cared about her. Her grandmother would help take care of her a lot of the time. She would help watch Krista. Krista would stay at her house very frequently. However, unfortunately, that grandmother passed away in 1988, and Krista definitely took this passing very, very hard. This was the closest person to her, and it resulted in Krista attempting to take her own life at the age of 12. And according to Krista, after this attempt, no one in her family really supported her through this. No one helped her or tried to get her help for this. She really was left out to figure it out on her own. Now, throughout her teenage years, Krista went back to living with her mom before dropping out of high school at the age of 18. And when Krista dropped out, her mom, Carissa, really decided that Krista needed some sort of guidance and structure in her life. It was clear after Krista dropped out of college that she was not going to be going to a college or a standard university. So she decided it would be best if Krista enrolled in a program called Job Corps. Now, if you are unfamiliar, Job Corps is a program that is offered all over the country, and it is designed to help young adults between the ages of typically 16 to 24 years old learn different types of trades with the goal of setting them up for success in their future. It's a career training program that's similar to college in the way that students in Job Corps would have the option to live on campus, they can live in dorms, and students really enjoy this because it gives them the option to feel independent. It's a sense of independence that they probably haven't had up until that point. It makes them feel like they too are living in the normal quote unquote college experience. There are many different types of trades that students can learn about while in Job Corps, such as finance, business, nursing, healthcare, security, computers, tech. The list really does go on. And again, it's for the purpose of setting the students up for success. Now, the students of Job Corps have expressed that while Job Corps is definitely a different experience than your standard university or your standard college, there still is a certain level of clickiness, popularity, and drama that you would still see at a standard high school or college campus when it came to the social lives of the students. Now, Krista began at the Job Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee in the fall of 1994. Now, according to the people who knew Krista, it was said that she had the type of personality that completely took over a room. She was a spitfire, she was a firecracker, she was very social. She was said to have had this incredibly large personality, which was kind of ironic for people to see because as far as her stature went, she was definitely on the smaller side. Her friends said that she was about 5'2" and under 100 pounds. So again, she was small in stature, but she was large in personality. Now, while Krista did have this incredibly large persona, her friends said it was a little bit of a gamble as to what side of that persona you were going to get. Friends of Krista stated that she was very much hot and cold. She could change her personality at the flip of a switch. The little things could set her off, and you never really knew what or when that was going to be. In the blink of an eye, Krista could lash out. She could start screaming and yelling and trying to fight and get physical. And at Job Corps, students would get reprimanded if they were ever doing something wrong, if they acted out of pocket, if they did something that was against policy. And when doing this, they would get points added to their record. And after a certain amount of points, if you added those up, a student could end up getting kicked out of the Job Corps program. And Krista did have a decent amount of points that were added up on her Job Corps record. These points were accumulated as a result of Krista trying to fight other students, her skipping school, her lashing out. So even though she was very social, she had this larger than life personality, there was a side of Krista that people did not want to set off. Now, as far as Krista's social life goes, Krista had a solid group of friends while she was at Job Corps. It probably won't come to any surprise when I tell you that within her group of friends, Krista was definitely the leader. She was more of the dominant one in her friend group, and this friend group consisted of several other girls. These were girls named Amy, Kim, Shadola, and Colleen Slemmer. It was said that Shadola was more of the follower of the friend group. She wanted to be well-liked, and specifically well-liked by anyone who was popular, which in this case was Krista Pike. But today, we're not going to be focusing on that as much. What we are going to be focusing on is another friend in that group, like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, which is Colleen Slemmer. Colleen Slemmer was born on September 20th, 1975 to her mom, May Martinez. Colleen was more on the shy side. She was much more timid and quiet, but she was incredibly kind and overall was known to just be a very nice human. Colleen was known to be a people pleaser. She just wanted everyone to be happy. She would give you the shirt off of her back in order to do so. She went to Job Corps to study computers. Colleen was very smart. She was very studious, and she was very motivated motivated to succeed, and she was incredibly talented when it came to technology, specifically computers. She knew everything there was to know about computers. And for the things that she did not know about, Colleen would stay up all hours of the night in the computer lab, just learning as much as there was to know. Now, when it came to Colleen's social life, like I mentioned, she was infiltrated in this group with Krista, Amy, Kim, and Shadola. And while she did really enjoy being in that group, it wasn't her number one priority. Again, her number one priority was her studies. It was her academics. It was her education. She knew what she was at Job Corps to do, and she really wasn't trying to let anyone or anything get in the way of that. And while that was very true in her social life, it also pertained to her love life as well. Colleen was not interested in getting involved with anyone romantically. She really didn't care about dating anyone. She wasn't really interested in having an active love life. Again, she was just very determined and motivated to focus on her studies and get to where she wanted to be in Job Corps. Now, while Colleen was not anywhere near interested in having any sort of a love life in Job Corps, Krista could not say the same. While Krista was in her junior year of Job Corps, she ended up meeting a 17-year-old named Daryl Shipp. Now, the two of them met through Krista's friend Kim, and immediately upon meeting, Krista was head over heels. Now, Daryl was at Job Corps studying culinary arts, and he was very social. He had a lot of friends, he was funny, he was said to be very active, and Daryl and Krista had a lot in common, including their rage and flip of a switch personality. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Krista was described as very hot and cold. She could immediately burst into a fit of rage, and Daryl was said to be the same way. He was known to get into fights at Job Corps, and he also was said to have a lot of anger. People said that you definitely did not want to be around Daryl when he would get into these fits of rage. But this did not matter to Krista. The two immediately hit things off and were inseparable from the very first few moments together, and there was an instant connection. Krista said that she felt very safe around Daryl. He was 6'1", and again, she was 5'2", so just on the physicality alone, Krista liked the fact that Daryl was this bigger guy and she was a little bit smaller. She felt like he could protect her and that he would stand up for her. But there was definitely a darker side to both Krista and to Daryl that left people feeling anything but safe. Daryl claimed to be a Satanist, and he was very open about this. In fact, he was very loud and open about being a Satanist. And people believed that he did this in order to instill fear in others. He wanted other people to be afraid of him and to be intimidated by him. He wanted other people to know not to mess with Daryl because he was a Satanist, or as he called it, worshiping the underlord. In Daryl's room, he had many different satanic ornaments. He had the satanic Bible. He also had a Ouija board in his room that he used quite frequently. He had different markings on his walls. And when walking into Daryl's room, you really were stepping into what people called a satanic lair. He kept an altar of Satan in his room that he would kneel to. And when Krista and Daryl got together, Krista completely inherited this same idea of Satanism. She began participating in it with Daryl. She began doing everything that he was doing in order to maintain being a Satanist. It was something that she was very, very open to and wanted to do with him because, again, she was so head over heels for him that she wanted to do anything that she could to make him happy. And for him, that was having someone who shared the same satanic values that he did. There was one instance where one of the dorm room advisors remembers that she was doing room checks, and the room checks involved going into Daryl's room. Now, when she went into Daryl's room to make sure that he was in there, she saw that not only was Krista in the room, which was against policy to begin with. However, when she walked in, she saw Krista and Daryl kneeling to the satanic altar that he had in his room, and they were screaming, chanting these satanic chants. And according to this dorm RA, she got incredibly frightened by this. She was disturbed by it. She screamed and ran out of the room and had to call up security. And the reason she did that was because there was then a fight that ensued between Krista, Daryl, and this RA, because because the RA had walked in on them doing their satanic chants and they were upset about that. So there was a fight that ensued and security had to be called in to break that fight up. Along with this, Krista also got a tattoo to show her devotion to Satanism. It was a tattoo that said Little Devil, and Taddaryl also had a tattoo as well that said Baby Satan. Now, even though Taddaryl and Krista were very much deep into this satanic lifestyle, most people that knew them didn't really take it seriously. Many people thought, as I said earlier, that they were really just doing this for attention. They felt like, again, it was just this negativity that they were putting out into the world because they wanted people to be intimidated by them. They wanted people to be afraid of them. They wanted to be this power couple in this satanic religion, and they wanted people to fear them because of it. People who knew Taddaryl and Krista called them doom and gloom because of how negative the two of them were. They almost acted like they were just walking in a trance. They were walking with this dark cloud hanging over their head. But again, everyone really saw this as an act and a ploy just to get some more attention. So now we're going to move into November of 1994. And again, yes, all of this has happened in just a few short months. In November of 1994, tensions began rising within the friend group of Krista and her friends because on one particular day, Colleen was walking down the hallway while Taddaryl was walking down the hallway at the same time. Now, the two of them ended up crossing paths and walking past each other, and Colleen gave Taddaryl a little friendly wave as they walked past. Now, obviously, Colleen knew Taddaryl since Taddaryl was dating Krista and Krista was her friend. So this was nothing more than just a friendly, hey, how are you doing? However, Krista was not having any of it. Krista took this little wave and twisted it into Colleen wanting to steal Taddaryl from her. Krista started talking to others in the friend group about this. However, others in the friend group reassured Krista that Colleen wanted nothing to do with Taddaryl. It was simply just an innocent wave as the two of them walked down the hallway together. But again, Krista did not want to hear any of it. Krista only wanted to listen to other people who were going to reassure her that she was right in thinking that Colleen wanted to steal her boyfriend. Now, Krista ended up confronting Colleen about this, who again reassured her that she did not want her boyfriend. She did not want to date Taddaryl. She wanted nothing to do with any of it. And this led to Krista confronting Colleen about this, who again reassured her that this was all being blown out of proportion. She didn't want anything to do with Taddaryl. She was not trying to steal Taddaryl. She didn't want to date Taddaryl. It was all just an innocent wave. However, Krista again was not having it. Colleen's personality was not confrontational like Krista's, and Krista was not getting that reaction that she wanted out of Colleen. And so because of this, Krista then went around the school and she started spreading rumors about Colleen. She started calling Colleen a slut, saying that she was easy, trying to steal people's boyfriends. She was a homewrecker. She was calling her a bitch. It was endless. And after weeks of this tormenting, Colleen finally had enough. She stood up to Krista, walked up to her one day and told her that she did not want to steal Taddaryl again and to please have the tormenting stop. According to Krista, Colleen also went on to say that she was not interested in quote unquote guys like him. And for Colleen, while she may have thought that she was doing the right thing in trying to reassure Krista that she did not want Taddaryl in any sense, it only made things worse for her because when Krista heard Colleen say that she did not go after guys like that or like guys like that, she took that and ran. Because when Krista heard that, she thought that Colleen was saying that because Taddaryl is black, and she figured that the only reason that Colleen would be saying that is because Colleen was a racist. So she then took that statement and equated it to Colleen being a racist and ran with that. Now, with this new wave of anger and rage that Krista now had, it only made things worse for Colleen. And it actually got to the point where Colleen's dorm room ended up being ransacked over this. And this really was the breaking point for Colleen. As I mentioned earlier, at Job Corps, you can get a certain amount of points accumulated when you go against policy or when you act out or when you have bad behavior. And up until this point, Colleen never went to any higher up or went to any administrator to express what was going on. She wanted to try and figure it out for herself, deal with it on her own. However, at this point, Colleen knew that she could not go on with this any longer, and she ended up going to the administrators of Job Corps and let them know what was going on. She told them about all the harassment, all of the bullying, and told them about the ransack that happened in her dorm room. And when Colleen did this, administration told her not to worry, that they were going to review Krista's record and decide her fate at Job Corps. Now, when Krista heard this, as you can imagine, it did not sit well with her at all. It did not make her reconsider how she had been acting. It, in fact, only made her more angry, more mad, and more bitter. Now, 1 month later, in December of 1994, things between Krista and Daryl started to unravel. This whole honeymoon phase, all of the rose-colored glasses, it was starting to reach a boiling point, and it was starting to come to an end. In December, Krista had found out that she was pregnant with Daryl's child, and while Krista was extremely excited about this, she was over the moon about being a mother, not only being a mother, but being the mother to Daryl's child. That was something that she was very excited about. However, Daryl did not seem to share the same excitement that Krista had. Everyone who knew Daryl specifically said that he was not ready to be a father, and that he confided in several people saying those same things. He had very little motivation. He had very little drive. He was not ready to be a family man, nor did he want to be one. Now, only about a week after announcing her pregnancy, Krista ended up having a miscarriage. And this is when things really shifted in the relationship between Krista and Daryl. It was said that at this point, the two of them began fighting constantly, and those fights did end up turning physical on both ends. Krista would attack Daryl, and there were also points where Daryl was physical with Krista a few times as well. Now, while all of this was happening, the school board at Job Corps did come to a decision about Krista's fate, and it was decided that she was going to be given one final chance. She had one last chance to prove herself, one last chance to redeem herself, and had she earned any more points against her record, she would automatically get kicked out of the program. Now, when people heard this at Job Corps, they were very surprised because they figured that there was not much more that Krista could have done to have gotten kicked out of the program. No one really understood why she was still there, why the administration was okay with still having her be a part of Job Corps. But for Krista, she was obviously very thrilled at this decision. It meant that she got to stay at the program, and more importantly, it meant that she got to stay with Daryl, because even though the two of them were having all these arguments and fights, after Christmas break, when people returned to campus in the beginning of 1995, it really did seem like Krista and Daryl had turned a new leaf in their relationship. They weren't fighting as much. They seemed to be back in a better place. And not only that, Krista herself seemed to be in a better place. She was nicer. She was friendly again. She was being nice to Colleen again. And for Colleen, she was just happy that all of the torment seemed to be put behind them. She felt like they were moving on with a new chapter. It was the beginning of a new year. They could leave everything in the past, and she felt like they could just move on. So this brings us to January 12th, 1995. So this is just almost under 2 weeks into the year of 1995. And on this particular night, Krista had gone up to Colleen and asked Colleen if she would like to go to Blockbuster with her later that evening. Now, Colleen was really excited about this. She was also a little taken aback. She was confused as to why Krista would want her out of all people. But again, she didn't question it really, because she thought that maybe this was just the beginning of their new stage of friendship. They could put everything in the past behind them, and they could really focus on this new chapter. And Colleen was eager to rebuild this friendship with Krista. Now, Krista and Colleen met up at approximately 8 p.m. on the night of January 12th, and as they were walking out of Job Corps, Corps, they came across Tadaryl and Shadola. Now, the two of them, Tadaryl and Shadola, asked what they were doing, what was going on, and Krista and Colleen just responded that they were going to Blockbuster together, and Tadaryl and Shadola had asked if they could come along, if they could join too, and Krista said sure. So now the four of them, Krista, Colleen, Tadaryl, and Shadola, were going to the video store together. Now, in order to leave Job Corps' campus, you had to sign out. Everyone who left campus and came onto campus had to sign out and sign in at this little guard shack. So everyone who exited and entered the campus would always have to do this. And on this particular night, that was no different. So when the four of them left, they all signed out at the guard shack. However, only 3 of them signed back in. The next morning on January 13th, 1995, there was a couple who was walking along a path in Tyson Park. Now, Tyson Park was an area that was visited frequently by a lot of the students at the University of Tennessee because it was in walking distance to that. It was a nice scenic walk that the students and young adults would go on frequently. It was also in walking distance to Job Corps. So this specific morning, there was a couple that was walking in Tyson Park, and they spotted what they believed to be a trail of blood. Now, it was the wife that first called this out. However, her husband said that it wasn't blood, it had to be transmission fluid. There was no way it would have been blood. But after closer inspection, he followed the trail back into the wooded area of the park and saw what he believed to be a dead animal because of how vicious and bloody the scene was. Now, when he looked a little closer, he realized that this was not an animal at all, but it was the body of a woman. They immediately called 911 and police arrived on the scene. When police were canvassing the area, they saw that the body was laying in a pile of dirt and there were handprints around where the body was. It was said that it was a gruesome scene, very bloody, and that the body was partially naked from the waist up. Now, around the area where the body was, there were also blooded clothing items hanging in the trees. There was a bloody shirt as well as a bloody bra. Now, when it came to the injuries on this woman, there were multiple slashes on her forehead as well as other areas of her body. Her throat itself was cut 7 different times, but the actual cause of death ended up being blunt force trauma, and there was a piece of her skull missing as well as a bloodied piece of pavement right beside her body, which did seem to be the murder weapon. Now, initially, police did not know who this victim was. However, they assumed that it had to be a student of either University of Tennessee or Job Corps. And once this became public, it really sparked a lot of fear in the area. Many students ended up going home because they did not feel safe on campus. So they ended up leaving altogether. Now, on January 13th at 3 p.m., so approximately 8 hours after the body was discovered, police were called into the morgue by the medical examiner because they told police that there was something that the detectives needed to see. Now, police went down to the morgue, and upon doing so, they noticed that there was a giant pentagram carved into the chest of the victim. Now, if you don't know, this is an upside down star inside of a circle, and it's known to be a satanic symbol. Now, this shocked police completely because this was something that they had never seen before. It really shifted the case into a whole different direction because they realized now that they were not just dealing with your typical murder scene. Not that there ever really is one. However, from what they have said, they stated that this was a case that they had not seen before, and it really changed the course of direction in this case. Now, that same day, on January 13th, there was a woman who reached out to police because her daughter had also gone to Job Corps. She was a student at Job Corps, and she hadn't heard from her daughter in quite some time. She had heard about the murder that happened at Tyson Park, and she was also worried because her daughter had told her about a few people in the program that were involved in Satanism. Now, when police heard this, they were able to track down and locate this woman's daughter. So the woman's daughter was not involved in this murder in any way. She was not the victim. She was completely unrelated to the case. But when police heard this, it gave them a direction. They were able to be pointed at several people in the program who were involved in Satanism. So at this point, police decide to take a trip to Job Corps. Once they got there, their first plan of action was to go to the guard at the front. Like I said, whoever entered and exited Job Corps had to write in on a sign-in and sign-out sheet. Police had asked the guard if they had the sign-out sheet for the night of January 12th, which in fact they did. When police looked at the sheet, they saw that on the night of January 12th, 4 people signed out, but only 3 people signed back in. And they learned that Colleen Slemmer was the girl who never signed in. Now, after learning this, police reached out to Colleen's mom, who was able to give them dental records of Colleen. And it was through those dental records that police were able to prove that the body murdered in Tyson Park was in fact Colleen Slemmer. Now, at this point, police wanted to speak to Daryl, Krista, and Shadola because obviously they were the other people that Colleen was with that night. Now, all 3 of them were brought down to the police station and separated into different rooms for questioning. Now, Krista was interviewed first out of the 3. Police said that Krista's behavior was a little unnerving. She seemed to be giddy and happy almost during the interview. It was quite disturbing, as what police have said. Now, when police sat down with her, they told her that she was there because they wanted to talk to her about the body that was found in Tyson Park. And without skipping a beat, Krista immediately responded with, quote, "You mean Colleen?" end quote. Now, police were taken aback by this because this obviously meant that Krista knew all about this. At this point, police had not publicized the identity of the body that was found in the woods. Now, Krista did not deny anything when speaking to police, and she immediately began confessing to this murder. According to Krista, she claimed that on the night of the murder, she had told Colleen that she needed to go to Blockbuster and invited her to come along. Colleen seemed excited about going to the store and immediately agreed to go with. On the way out, Krista and Colleen came across to Daryl and Shadola, and the 4 of them went together. Now, before going to Blockbuster, the 3 of them told Colleen that they needed to stop off in Tyson Park because they had a secret bag of weed that they had planted in the park and they wanted to go pick some of it up. Now, Colleen went along with this. She went with them to the park, and once they got there, Krista said, quote, "I wasn't even thinking. I just blacked out because she made me so mad. I just kept hitting her and hitting her and hitting her. And she just kept going, 'Please stop, please stop.' But I said, 'Shut up. I don't want to talk to you,'" end quote. Krista went on to say that she was the one who started the attack on Colleen, and then Daryl and Shadola jumped in afterwards, and they were also involved with the slicing of Colleen's body using a box cutter that they had brought along. Krista claimed that she ordered Colleen to take off her bra and her shirt because she thought it would stop Colleen from trying to run away if she were going to try and escape. Once Colleen did this, Krista claimed that her, Shadola, and Daryl then carved the pentagram into her chest. Now, again, that piece of information was not made public yet. That piece of information, police kept close to them. They did not want that getting out, and they wanted to be able to use that to their advantage during their investigation. So now they have Krista telling them that she was the one, along with these other 2, that carved the pentagram into her chest. Now, according to Krista, she claimed that while this pentagram was being carved into Colleen's chest, Colleen was very much conscious. She was awake and she was fighting for her life. She was begging and pleading with Krista, telling her that she would move back to Florida and she would never have to see her ever again. She would leave her alone, whatever she wanted. Colleen was begging, but Krista did not care. She then used the box cutter to slice Colleen's throat several times and told Colleen to be quiet because, quote, "It was harder to hurt somebody when they're talking to you," end quote. Krista said that she then used the piece of pavement that was found by Colleen's body to knock her over the head, and then once she was dead, they used the box cutter to remove a piece of her skull and wrapped it up and took it with them as a souvenir. Police said that while Krista was explaining all of this, they were watching her continually get more excited as she was recounting the events that took place. She also claimed that the reason and motivation behind the murder at all was because she felt like Colleen was trying to steal Daryl from her. She also claimed to police that one time she woke up in the middle of the night and Colleen was standing over her with the box cutter, and so she felt like she had to get rid of Colleen because she was trying to take her away from Daryl. However, there's never been any confirmation of that ever. None of Colleen's friends, none of Krista's friends have ever been able to confirm that that was ever the case, and everyone who knows Colleen said that they can't imagine her ever doing something like that. Now, at this point, police wanted to talk to Daryl. Now, when police sat down with Daryl, they noticed that he was wearing a pentagram necklace, and when asked about it, Daryl said that he had been involved in Satanism since he was 11 years old. Police told Daryl about the pentagram that was found carved into Colleen's body, and he actually confessed to doing half of the pentagram himself. He never once claimed that he wasn't involved in the murder, that he didn't know about the murder. He claimed that he was involved, and in fact, he carved half of that pentagram and Krista carved the other half. When asked what the meaning of the pentagram was to him, Daryl said that it was the symbol for the satanic star. Now, according to Daryl, he claimed that on the night of January 12th, he knew from the very beginning that there was a plan in place that Krista had orchestrated to murder Colleen. So that right there proves premeditation. That proves that Krista had orchestrated this entire plan all along. There was never any Blockbuster store, any thought that Colleen had that Krista was just trying to be a nice friend. That all went out the window. This was Krista orchestrating this plan from the very beginning. Daryl confirmed that the whole video store thing was a cover-up and that the plan all along was that they were going to take Colleen out to the woods. However, according to him, he thought that they were only going to scare her. However, that quickly changed once they got out there. He claimed that at most he felt like Krista was going to physically fight Colleen, but not kill her. However, again, once they got out there, things changed. Now, police also spoke with Shadola, who basically just claimed that even though she was there, she had nothing to do with the murder itself. She said that she basically just stood by and watched as Krista, the ringleader of the pack, murdered her friend. Now, regardless, at this point, Krista, Daryl, and Shadola were all arrested and charged with the murder of Colleen. Now, in March of 1996, Krista was finally put on trial, and the trial lasted approximately 2 weeks. Now, during the trial, Krista's friend Kim ended up taking the stand, and Kim was Krista's roommate at the time. Now, according to her, she said that on the night of January 12th, when Krista came back to the dorms after going out with Colleen and Daryl and Shadola, she claimed that Krista was in a state of giddiness and excitement and adrenaline that Kim had never seen before. Kim asked Krista what was going on and what was happening that made Krista feel like this, and that is when Krista confessed to everything that had just happened. Krista admitted to Kim that her, Daryl, and Shadola had all murdered Colleen. She claimed that they beat her up, sliced her body, all while Colleen was begging for her life. And to prove it, at this time, Krista then took out a piece of tissue from her pocket, unwrapped it, and showed her the piece of Colleen's skull that she had taken as that souvenir. Kim said that while Krista was explaining all of this, Kim had her jaw to the floor. She was completely shocked and could not believe the things that she was hearing. Krista then told Kim that if she told anyone, Krista was going to have to kill her as well. She then looked at Kim and said, "Love you, bye," before walking out of the dorm room. The following day, Kim said that when she saw Krista in the lunchroom, she asked if she still had the piece of the skull, to which Krista responded, "Yes, I'm eating breakfast with it." Later that day, Krista was seen bragging to other friends of hers in class about the blood on her shoes and showed other friends the piece of skull that was in her pocket. Krista's friends claimed that she was very open about the murder scene and claimed that Colleen's blood and brains were pouring out at the crime scene. Now, after the trial was concluded and after several hours of deliberation, Krista was found guilty and sentenced to death by electrocution for the murder of Colleen Slemmer. This would make Krista the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the United States. She was only 20 years old when she was convicted of the murder of Colleen. Now, Tadaro did receive a life sentence plus 25 years, and Shadola received probation for pleading guilty to be an accessory after the fact. Now, Krista did try to appeal her conviction in June 2001. However, she then dropped her appeal and said that she wanted to keep her sentence of being executed via electrocution. The judge granted her request, and the execution date of August 19th, 2002 was set. However, Krista soon changed her mind 1 year later in June 2002 and tried to appeal again. And while the motion was denied, 3 judges on the appeals court ruled that they were going to hold off on the execution date while they continue looking into the appeal proceedings. In December of 2008, Krista requested a new trial but was turned down, and she went back onto death row. In March 2012, Krista was caught trying to make an escape out of prison with the help of a corrections officer as well as another man that she had been writing letters to named Donald Coet. Donald was sentenced to 7 years in prison for this, and the correctional officer lost his job. In November of 2023, so just recently, Krista was denied yet again with her motion to reopen her appeal and reduce her sentence. And as of now, there is still no execution date set for Krista. She is currently 48 years old, and if she were to be executed, she will be the first person in 200 years that Tennessee has executed. And that, you guys, is the case of Krista Pike and Colleen Slemmer. I am very, very interested to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Please let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah, and I am your host of Killer Instinct. Again, if you have not, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.